Welcome back. Joining us to dissect the news of the day is Phil Coorey, political editor at the Australian Financial Review. Phil, thanks for your time.
No worries, Annalise.
Now, the big discussion is around coronavirus at the moment, how prepared we were in a budgetary sense, and whether we're going to get that surplus.
Yeah, look, the government's no longer guaranteeing a surplus. Well, they stopped guaranteeing it when the fires broke out, actually, so they're just still not guaranteeing it. There is a sliver of hope that they still may get one because the iron ore price is very high. Still, I think it's about $85 free on board at the moment, and the dollar's at a 10-year low, so the exchange rate's very favourable. So they may, they may still get a surplus, but I think more importantly, from an economic point of view, is this quarter being a negative quarter, the March quarter. It's already hit by the fires, and now this. Now, 2 negative quarters in succession make a recession. Should this thing spill over into the next quarter, then it could start getting really serious. So. Surplus here or there is not sort of super important from the economic point of view. It's more about what's happening to growth in industries and various sectors of the economy. From a political point of view, the surplus is important because the government banked it.
They've made it important. Back in the black. Once you hashtag it.
Yeah, it is surprising. I mean, Scott Morrison made a good point yesterday. No one saw this coming. When they handed down the budget last year. And all those people who were calling on the government to spend the surplus before it was even banked, with New Start increases and bringing forward tax cuts and so forth, there's a sense of vindication. But, the government was equally foolish, I think, for, making those ads for Back in Black and so forth, because they banked it as well in that sense. They banked it politically. And, Wayne Swan showed the folly of that all those years ago when he announced the budget was back in surplus, and it wasn't even close. So they'll have to wear that from a political sense, but economically I think it's a lot more serious.
And it's playing into some strong arguments for Labor, because Labor's saying they should have seen the bushfire crisis coming. That's one of their arguments.
Sure.
And then the other argument is that we're hearing today from Stephen Jones was saying that we need economic stimulus. That's pretty alarming language.
Well, Labor has been calling since before Christmas for, some sort of stimulus, bring forward tax cuts, do New Start, do something like that. Government's
calling for an economic stimulus package, I should say.
Well, Morrison's ruled it out. The Prime Minister's ruled it out. So
yeah.
I don't think it's definitely not going to happen. They haven't got if they were to do that, they'd definitely drive the budget deep into deficit because it'd have to be significant. I mean, you can't. As the tax cuts showed us, the first round of tax cuts showed us, that was 7 or 8 billion went to the economy and didn't do anything, right? So, when Kevin Rudd did his big mega stimulus. Back during the GFC, the first round was 11 billion, the second round was 42 billion. So you'd have to be talking large numbers to have a meaningful effect. So I think the government is still holding on to the hope, I guess, or the belief that this thing is going to pass quickly. Hopefully, it doesn't go into the next quarter. At the same time, they're making pandemic preparations, which shows in the back of their mind maybe it's not going to pass quickly. So, short answer, Annalise, is no one knows. You could blow a lot of money on a stimulus and then, not do anything. If we're in this position in 3 or 4 months' time, maybe they'll be thinking differently. Maybe they will have to do some sort of stimulus and just whack the budget deep in a deficit. But at this stage, I think the view in the government is try and ride it out.
You can see something out of this G20 meeting in Riyadh just has everyone spooked.
Well, so it should. I mean, look, to me, it's more serious economically than it is medically. But it's just the sense of panic and chaos it's creating. Oh, there's an outbreak in Italy, I'm going to cancel my holiday in Italy. Well, it's a bit like saying I'm not coming to Australia because there's a bushfire in Australia. People just will overreact like Billy-O on these things. So that's the other thing you're trying to counter. I mean, it was interesting. I thought the Prime Minister said yesterday how successful Australia had been in self-isolating this disease. Like, despite this travel ban on China, 30,000 people have come in from China, the eligible ones, and we haven't had any cases of it. I thought he was leaving open the prospect of maybe lifting the travel ban before time, on the basis we can cope with it, and that's because there's a lot of pressure from the Chinese government, there's a lot of pressure from the university sector, and economically it would help. So they don't know, we don't know, but that's why we pay them the big dollars to make these decisions.
Absolutely. And the other discussion that's been going for the last few weeks is this 2050 target. This has proved pretty divisive within the coalition between Liberals and Nats especially. Yeah,
and look, it's coming out in the language now. I thought the Prime Minister yesterday was much more specific, both in addressing the party room and then in the Parliament. He was essentially saying, I'm not criticising Labor for setting the target, I'm criticising Labor for not having a plan to get there. And then he said that's why we support what New South Wales is trying to do, because they got a plan. and it's very specific language, whereas the Nats are just saying we don't want to target at all, we shouldn't be doing anything at all, you know. Because the PM is trying to drag the coalition down that way. A, because you've got to cut emissions, B, it's making economic sense. And as Ines Willicks pointed out with Kieran Gilbert yesterday, the head of the AI group, you know, the UK and the European Union may not sign FTAs with us if we don't have some commitment in this space. So, you know, we'll get some clarity around this after they do the technology target next week, or whatever they call it, the roadmap, where they're going. But clearly the PM wants to keep that option open, and, you know, from both an economic and political sense. But the Nats are the big fly in the ointment.
It was interesting to see that Labor came out with this as their first policy. Do you think it was as much Labor trying to quell kind of dissent from the left of the Labor Party as much as trying to put a target on the coalition?
I'm not sure why they did it when they did it. There was no urgency for Labor to do it. They did sort of make themselves a target for a couple of days, but it seems to have passed already. And again, you know, they did say one of the reasons they did do it would be to expose the differences in the coalition, so perhaps it's been successful there. But look, what we've got ultimately is both major parties on the same page here, Annalise. Both major parties agreeing something has to be, we have to have that 2050 thing. Now, it's 30 years away. I can't remember what I was doing 30 years ago. I don't think anyone can. You probably weren't even born.
I was being born, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's hardly ambitious, if you like.
Yeah.
We still need a medium-term target from both parties. But, you know, wouldn't it be amazing if Scott Morrison came out and said, well, look, they want to do it, we want to do it, let's just knock heads because we're going to be sharing government between us for the next 30 years. I think the public could probably rejoice in a majority sense, but, you know, partisan politics always gets in the way. But I feel that's where it's going eventually.
Absolutely. Well, Phil Coorey from the Australian Financial Review, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.